Arius' teachings were burnt up, and if any survived, they were later destroyed by haters. It's questionable whether quotes from him from churchmen are reliable, given that they denounced him as an egregious heretic. Many scholarly studies have suggested that Arius was poisoned by his opponents, while his dissenters ridiculously presume his death was a miracle from the heart and hands of God, as a direct result of the abominable heresy spewing from his lips and pen. From a website, they say poison was a very common method used by pagan Romans. Throughout the Dark and Middle Ages, Trinitarians have brutally attempted to stamp out Arianism, but even the Spanish Inquisition could not quell Arius's beliefs. As Roman Catholicism began to decline in Central Europe, Arianism rose again, even in the Church of England. End of quote. Very strange indeed that Trinitarians just haven't been able to get the whole Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God heresy completely eradicated in all its sufficiency. Sorry for the sarcasm, maybe. In the notorious Nicene Council, this tragically occurred. According to Constantine and the Conversion of Europe, page 161, they say Constantine dropped his bombshell on the council. He suggested that the relation of the Son to the Father might be by the word homoousios, of one essence. There we have it, folks, why it is that Trinitarians well schooled on the idea are spouting such philosophical and biblical terminology. It's from Constantine, not from God. Rhetoric and concepts instigated by the words of imaginative famous philosophers and not by the terminology or declarations of the Lord. From the article Trinity, Volume 10, they say toward the end of the 1st century and during the 2nd, many learned men came over from both Judaism and paganism to Christianity. These brought with them into the Christian schools of theology their Platonic ideas and phraseology. Yes, obviously. 1 Corinthians 8:1 says knowledge puffs up while love builds up. There was a whole lot of philosophically informed worldly knowledge inherent in the furtherance of the Trinity dogma, accompanied by a severe and concerning lack of love and mercy. That continues to this day on a somewhat less tragic scale. Though there's less blood, thankfully, the condemnation to eternal damnation and threats of a loss of favor with God and Christians still reigns supreme as just a couple of the weapons of intellectual intimidation commonly wielded to keep the so-called heretics in line. That is not any more appetizing or less egregious than the Watchtower organization shunning, labeling, and condemnation of conscientious objectors. The term Trinity is not a biblical term, and we are not using biblical language when we define what is expressed by it as a doctrine, says the International Standard Bible Encyclopedia in the article Trinity. Let no one deceive himself. If anyone among you thinks that he is wise in this age, let him become a fool, that he may become wise. For the wisdom of this world is folly with God. For it is written, He catches the wise in their craftiness. And again, the Lord knows the thoughts of the wise, that they are futile. So let no one boast in men. And that's from 1 Corinthians 3:18-20. Philosophers, scholars, and religious leaders are frequently hailed as heroes with profitable knowledge, wise words, and pure intent. This often isn't the case, and all great minds should be conscientiously and wholeheartedly questioned, because they're not all in line with the mind of Christ. Christ unhesitatingly and humbly revealed his identity left and right. Yet ideas that don't seem to be his at all get thrown in the air, caught, and held tightly by traditionalists, either in addition to or altogether in opposition to his own. Much like it is with the Watchtower, there are some benevolent and trustworthy foundational truths being believed within the realms of orthodoxy, but regrettably they are mixed with a heaping helping of insidious deceptions tainting their beauty. Most are sincere servants, sincerely deceived. Therefore God will have mercy and cause the truth to light up in the humblest of hearts, ready to seek and find him in the grandest sense possible, hopefully sooner than later. I, for one, won't be trusting any philosopher or scholar to tell me Jesus is consubstantial and co-equal, words that are expressly unbiblical, to his Father, when Jesus himself said, "The Father is greater than I. And why do you call me good? No one is good but God alone." Amongst about 1 million. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration. Other things that common sense should tell us prove he isn't the Most High God. I have heard Trinitarians make a mockery of these texts with their equivocation and denial of their obvious intentions. Were those around supposed to know he meant he was inferior, but only by the haphazard limitation of a supposed human nature to at least one of the three persons in a one God essence that's three? Surely not. If so, specification at any point in the New Testament would have been appreciated for clarification. The cementing and furtherance of the 4th century Trinity dogma was certainly not full of the fruits of the Spirit. The Trinity wasn't the only highly questionable belief or practice adopted in the Council of Nicea, which was full of many uninspired vindictive men. Any revelation or imagining is only as good as the Spirit behind it and its preservation. If it has a trail of blood and pagan implications, it should be unquestionably questioned. From Greg Dibel's book, They Never Told Me This in Church, he says, what if instead of being so banished, a large dose of paganism was actually absorbed into the Christian faith? What if the pure apostolic faith firmly rooted in Jesus of Nazareth was very early on being divorced from its historical context? Many fine Bible scholars have put forward a seemingly unassailable case that the Jesus of Jewish history has been buried under generations of accumulated myth. The Jesus of history has been supplanted by the Christ of mythology. The well-known dictum of Canon Gouge, who considered that the infiltration of Roman and Greek ideas into the Christian church represents a disaster from which we have never recovered, either in doctrine or practice, is well worth pondering. Let God be found true. Though many a man who claims to be born again may lie to you, they know not what they do. I hope they don't. From the New Catholic Encyclopedia in the article Trinity, they say, when one does speak of unqualified Trinitarianism, one has moved from the period of Christian origins to, say, the last quadrant of the 4th century. It was only then that what might be called the definitive Trinitarian dogma, one God in three persons, became thoroughly assimilated into Christian life and thought. If it did not fully materialize until the 4th century, you can confidently place your bets that it's a different doctrine. Sounds like new light, very similar to the watchtowers, which is usually detectably assailable, unneeded. Preposterous, egregious anathemization of supposed non-adhering heretics was cemented full force in Nicaea. So professed Christians today, who condemn and de-church fellow professed Christians who think that God is only one person and that Christ is that one's heir and son, are, even if perhaps unknowingly, bowing at the throne of Constantine instead of Christ.